let me say that sometimes we are putting too much burden on the shoulder of NATO, because some of these issues maybe has to be tackled by the United Nations, by the European Union, by other international organizations like the OSCE and so on. And sometimes my concern, and going back to what I said just before, is that again we are reacting and not looking to action and to look a little bit forward. And I refer, for instance, when I look to the region, and now we are moving to Iraq, I refer to that maybe we have to take into consideration not only to the problems that we have today in this shore of the Mediterranean, but also to the south of the south. And I'm referring, for instance, to the training camps that I see building now in this very moment of terrorist groups that are grouping in Mauritania. Nobody is speaking about this. So we are able now to prevent this, but I'm thinking to the problem of scarcity of water and other issues that are there on the table in front of us, but we are too much committed now to try to solve the emergency. But I don't want to lose the connections, and I really want to welcome the director of the Al Narain Center for Strategic Studies in Baghdad, and I hope that we can establish the connection with him, and in order to listen to him and to get this angle and this perspective from Baghdad. Good morning.
In order to listen to him and to get this angle and this perspective from Baghdad. Next morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Do you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hello. Hi.
Yes, please.
Good morning again.
Yes, it's okay. Please go on.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you all on giving us such an opportunity to be part of this event. We were preparing that many Iraqi youth to be part of this activity, but unfortunately, because there is an event here in Baghdad that most of the, because there is a pilgrimage for one of the Shia imams, and so many of those streets in Baghdad for security reasons to protect the pilgrims, so it is hard to move from side to side. And so this is why most of them, they couldn't attend. But they are following up by the other media sources this event. I recognize some good friends, James Abathuri. Hi, James. Good to see you again. And Dr. Faisal, as well as the chair of this panel. I think that all of you are aware of the situation in Iraq. And there is an international effort to help Iraq, and it is in our war against the terrorism represented by Daesh and other Al-Qaeda groups. But of course, our fight is on daily basis, from hour to hour. Maybe they will have what happens of there is a positive outcome, if I can say, that this crisis makes the Iraqis unified, and this is a fact. Or I mean, upon all the levels of the Iraqis, on the political, on the social, on the tribal. So our security forces with the tribal fighters, with the popular mobilization, they are carrying operations and facing a brutal, aggressive enemy, and you are all know. I fully agree with my friend, Professor Faisal Ayhan, on his comments that the NATO nations, they have to do more active actions, to develop their actions and to prevent their citizens to join Daesh and the terrorist group. So by this, we are going to reduce, as you know, their sources and to protect their nation as well. And most of the people that are there, the relationship with Iraq and NATO started since 2004 with NATO training mission in Iraq, and then we will after I can say that the mission is finished in 2011. Then we went to the individual partnership program, and the relation is developing on different levels, political and also on the technical and other levels. So my point is that the fight with Daesh, it is not only the fight of the Iraqis, and which is also true that Iraq fights on behalf of the region and on behalf of the world, whatever the causes it was. But we are eager to continue with this fight by all different means, and we are looking for more support and cooperation, not only from NATO, from the other nations. Thank you for this opportunity, and hoping that this conference will have additional values on the international effort on counterterrorism. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for your extraordinary contribution, and I'm sure that our friend James will bring your insight to the other hotel close to us, where the ministerial meeting is going on. And I'm so sorry that we don't have enough time to address in the proper way all these very serious issues, but I would like to take some questions that I know are coming from the floor, and so please. Maybe we will group them, and I will ask the speakers to. It's 1, 2, and 3.
My name is Marisa. I'm a researcher at SETA. I would like to ask my question to James Apuratai. As Mustafa Aydın mentioned during his speech, he said, I think the Turkish people have got some questions in their mind about this operation capability of these Patriot 2 batteries that are deployed in 3 different states. Maybe you heard about it 2-3 weeks ago. There was the Al-Fatah missile was launched from Syria, and it was just 185 kilometers, and it was dropped within the borders of the Hatay. So when we look at the Patriot batteries, they got 150 ranges for the identification and just 20 kilometers for the engagement. So even we cannot, do you understand what I mean? We have got a security gap, just even for 185 kilometers. So what do you think about this? Just 6 batteries, and even they cannot very well operational capability for protecting our borders.
I would like to group a second question there.
Okay, thank you very much, Francisco Costa, IATA International President. My question is also for Mr. James Apuratai. This issue we are addressing right now concerns, of course, the most for Turkey or the southern border, as we have been discussing here, but also to a string of countries in the Mediterranean, such as Portugal, Italy, and also Spain. My question is, and also taking in consideration your soundbite that we have been retweeting about the non-intervention of NATO in Libya, how can the alliance come up with a common solution that will, in some points, satisfy all these countries and all these southern flanks, but also in the Mediterranean area? Is that even possible? Thank you.
Hi, Martin Michelot from France. I had a question for James Patherai and also a question for our Turkish hosts. The first question concerns basically your thinking at NATO on capabilities, on how to address simultaneous crisis. Because the two crises in our neighborhoods kind of infer that we need different capabilities to deal with them. I mean, we have hybrid warfare in the east, which is conducted by very different means. And in the south, there is a need for more intelligence, more surveillance capabilities, strategic airlifting, fighter jets, I mean, different types of capabilities. So how, in your planning at NATO, are you able to discuss with partners the issue of being able to handle both crises and especially being able to equip properly to handle these crises? And the question to our Turkish hosts, and this is maybe informed from my French perspective, where you mentioned very clearly that there are a lot of foreign fighters who come from NATO member states to fight with the Islamic State group. What is the level of the debate in Turkey on the cooperation with European countries, or even more specifically with France, in order to stop the influx of foreign fighters coming from the European countries, crossing the Turkish border into Syria? Because I think this is a point of view that is extremely underrepresented in France and in the rest of Europe. Thank you.
And the last question here, please.
Hello, my name is Katrina. I'm Secretary General of Latvian Transatlantic Organization. And I wanted to go back to the role of NATO, what it is. And if we speak specifically about the ISIS, Daesh, call it whatever you want, Professor Aydin mentioned that it's a very complex organization and it requires a hybrid response to deal with it. So should really NATO be the one who takes responsibility for the whole response? Because I don't think so. We have a global coalition, we have a EU strategy for Syria, for Iraq, against the Islamic State. So I think as it was mentioned, we're just putting too much on the NATO shoulders for this. So Mr. Rapporteur, just comment if I'm mistaken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will proceed in this way. I will ask, in order, the last two speakers, 1 minute each, if they have some comments, and then I will ask James maybe to close our session. So please.
Yeah, thank you very much. About the foreign fighters, we can prevent the foreign fighters. First of all, the NATO members have to be a common interest, but unfortunately, NATO members having a common interest about the ISIS or Daesh or Nusra or Islamic Front. Some members say they are a terrorist group, the other members say nothing about the Nusra Front, for example. And so if they haven't a common perspective and common interest, how they can establish common intelligence services and share the intelligence services to each other? And we have to know, we are talking about more than 200,000 fighters inside Syria and Iraq, and maybe 10% of them as foreigners. So if the NATO members, if they establish a good and strong links in the intelligence and the perspective also, we can prevent the foreign fighters, and this is a structural they can respond. And the second, as I mentioned, the perspective of the state have to be clear about this terrorist organization. If, for example, we can defeat these terrorist organization in the Shangal, or in the Kobani, or in the other region, in the Tal Afar. Why? Because the Shangal is the value of the NATO, but we are couldn't protect these minority groups in the Shangal, so we are lost the protect value of the NATO. And the second, if we are not defeat this terrorist organization inside here, they will be split over inside the NATO members, then you couldn't take any achievements to defeat these terrorist organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, Dr.
Just very shortly about the debate on Turkey, on foreign fighters and European role. It was a few weeks ago that foreign minister complained that the Europeans are not cooperating enough with Turkey on intelligence about the foreign fighters. And he in fact gave some numbers. I don't have the numbers with me, but he gave some staggering numbers that the foreign fighters caught by Turkish authorities, sent back to Europe, and then they come back to Turkey again to try to go to Syria. And there was a problem, obviously, up until January 2015 by the Turkish authorities and by the European authorities to cooperate. It seems to me that since January 2015, they are cooperating increasingly to stop this problem. And another aspect of this is to look into the underlying reasons why these people are going to Syria to fight and to die, actually. The number of foreign fighters coming from France and Germany are higher than the foreign fighters going from Turkey to Syria, for example. We are the bordering country, right? It doesn't make sense. So you have to, the European countries has to look into themselves, what's motivating to these people to live their lives to go to Syria. So that's also, and finally, it's a very relevant question. I don't think that it's NATO that should take the main responsibility to fight with ISIS. This is a totally new threat, different type of a threat. There is a role for NATO, but it doesn't have to take the main responsibility. But NATO is, of course, as an organization, has survived many crises and has an ability that all the other organizations and institutions do not have. So NATO has a strong role to play, not responsibility, but role to play. And let us not forget that NATO can act if its members decide NATO to act. So the main responsibility rests with the members of NATO, not NATO itself as an organization. Thank you.
James, thank you.
That might be more than 1 minute.
Yes, yes.
1.5.
I was leaving 5 minutes. 5 minutes for the 5 questions that you got.
Three will do. First, let me actually address the issue that you raised, and that is the reaction versus prevention. And the reason I wanted to come back to it was because it is actually something of great interest to the Secretary General of NATO, the new one, Mr. Stoltenberg, because he believes that we need to invest more in prevention. And he's sort of been looking at the amount of money we put into prevention versus the amount of money that the military operations cost if you haven't done prevention effectively. And of course, it is orders of magnitude more to come after the crisis has exploded than to invest in preventing it. Of course, the complication always comes into the details. In other words, there are hundreds of near crises. So which one do you put your extra prevention into? It comes from different budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So it's unfortunately not as easy as it looks, of course, but it certainly makes sense. And I think you have a like-minded partner in the Secretary General. In terms of the questions, the Patriot battery deployments were, of course, determined on the basis of advice from our Turkish colleagues, in particular the military. And so it is the result of a military assessment. If that military assessment changes, then a discussion needs to be had in NATO. But I do recall there was an extensive military process to determine where to put these batteries, and of course, any discussion can be had to change that. In terms of Libya and any kind of military intervention, I would say 2 things. I don't think the tweet was quite accurate in what I said. And sometimes that happens with tweets. In that I didn't exclude any future roles for NATO, but I did say it's true that right now I don't see a military deployment for the alliance in Libya for a number of reasons, including the complications of a Security Council resolution for NATO in Libya. But I would say this. First, NATO has a lot of credibility in Libya amongst many of the people who matter. And who do I mean? I mean the heads of the brigades. I had the opportunity, and the brigades themselves, I had the opportunity to meet with them twice when I was there, more than 20 of the leaders of these revolutionary brigades. And these were the groups in the large majority who were actually working in a certain sense in partnership with NATO during the operation. And they respect NATO and what it can do. And were actually looking for and asked for, through me, a greater NATO role in the period after the air operation came to an end. And here I'd like to agree very much with one of the speakers, or one of the people who raised a question. I think we as an international community, starting with NATO, but also the EU, the UN, and coalitions, need to learn some lessons from the past few operations. And two of those lessons are, we need to begin at the beginning, the planning for after the military operation ends. They are not two distinct and totally separate